Thank you, and welcome to our Global DevCon 2021. Although we're not physically together, we are driving this as one global DevCon. Unlike in 2019, when we last met, we had regional DevCons. So let's take advantage of that to collaborate remotely and really drive innovation around how we leverage our developer community to drive new solutions for our mutual customers. So, let's take a look at our strategy. This is one that's been very consistent at Zebra and one that we've been pitching to our developer community as well as our customers, industry analysts, partners, investors for the last 7 years. It is enterprise asset intelligence, which you've embraced and helped us deliver over the last half a dozen years, really enabling every asset and worker on the edge to be visible, connected, and optimally utilized. And maybe unlike 2 or 3 years ago, when we were really focused on the left-hand side of this slide, right, our core product portfolio around mobile computing and print and scanning and RFID, we've been really busy, as you've probably seen, over the last few years on the right-hand side of this chart, and driving acquisitions and inorganic investments to advance the optimally utilized proposition. Some of this you heard from Suresh earlier, given our investments in Reflexis, which is a deal we closed in September of last year, just a little over a year ago. But even more recently with Antuit.ai that we closed just about a month and a half ago. And right on the heels of that was Fetch Robotics, where we're leveraging autonomous mobile robots that work seamlessly with humans in warehouse environments and other settings in order to be able to drive workflow optimizations. So listen, just in opening it up, I want to thank you again for going on this enterprise asset intelligence journey with us. I know when we first spoke about this vision, it wasn't clear exactly how we were all going to realize it and make it happen. But we've made our mark on the industry. We've got adoption by customers. And as I'm going to speak to you about, there's never been a better time to capitalize on this vision than right now. Unfortunately, some of the behaviors that result in Zebra having the optimal vision here were ushered in by the pandemic, have been accelerated by the pandemic. And although the pandemic is starting to subside, thankfully, the behaviors ushered in by the pandemic, the convenience, the on-demand economy elements of being able to order what you want, when you want, and have it delivered the way you wish is something that's here to stay. And we really look forward to working with you, our developer community, to take full advantage of that and drive new experiences for our customers and their customers or end consumers. So what's fueling this transformation? What's really gotten accelerated? Let's just take a look at a few data points that I think are really compelling. First of all, if you've opened a recent article on pretty much any media site, you've come across some of the challenges in the supply chain. We've got 30% more moving through a supply chain that's operating at 70% of pre-COVID levels. When you kind of net this out, it means that the global supply chain is operating at about 40% of the capacity that's required. This has created a lot of bottlenecks, a lot of challenges, but it's also increased the need and the investments by our customers in real-time supply chain visibility. And we'll talk a little bit about how Zebra solutions are enabling the delivery of that real-time supply chain visibility. 11% may not sound like a big percentage, but that's actually the global labor deficit as a percentage of workforce that we're going to see by 2030. Let me just put that in perspective a little bit. Today, we're at about a 3% labor deficit. And what I mean by that is we're short 3% of labor that would be required to realize the full economic output of what the economy can supply. And so today, that's resulting in about $2 trillion globally of unrealized economic gain because of that 3% labor shortage. In just a few years, by 2025, that labor shortage is going to result in a 6% deficit, or about $4 trillion of unrecognized economic output. And by 2030, as we're seeing here, that's going to reach 11%, which is a whopping $8.5 trillion of unrealized economic output globally, because we just don't have the labor to apply to deliver on that value. And this is why automation, intelligence, orchestration, leveraging data to drive workflows at the edge has never been more important, not just for our customers, but frankly for the world. And it's an exciting time to be working with you, our developers, working with our customers, working with the industry, so that 11% doesn't end up devaluing that economic output. How can we, in the face of that shortage, leverage technology and leverage automation to realize that we can create that economic output that would otherwise go unrealized? That's one of the major opportunities before us. And lastly, from a tech perspective, there's so many stats to pick from, but I think this one may be one of the most profound, which is that we're seeing a doubling every 16 months in the improvement of AI algorithmic efficiency. And why is this important? It's important because this directly relates to how we can use data, computer vision, edge processing, AI and machine learning at the edge, operating on the edge, to be able to drive some of this decision automation, or as the industry is starting to call it, digital decisioning. Taking all of the data that we have, that we can collect from the edge, from all of this connectivity, from the mobility, and operate on that data in real time to turn it into insights that we can deliver to frontline workers to help them be the best they can be and help realize the challenges associated with the first two areas that I mentioned here around labor shortage and the supply chain challenges. So what that really means is we're not just seeing an increase in efficiency, as we all might be familiar with from a Moore's law perspective, which says that processing power doubles every 18 months. That's still continuing to happen, but now layered on top of that processing power, we're seeing AI efficiency double every 16 months. So we have the ability to run much more complex AI algorithms with a lower and lower cost edge processing capability. And that's changing the economics of what it takes to deploy these solutions that can deliver efficiencies to our customers. Really exciting stuff, massive amounts of acceleration, and I'm really excited to go on the journey with our developer community on this. The last takeaway on this slide was a great quote, I thought, from one of our larger customers. And this CEO was talking about automation. And if you think about that labor shortage I mentioned and the unrealized economic gain, his quote was, automation is not about return on investment anymore. It's not even about the return on investment. It's about fundamental business continuity. What he was really saying is, yeah, business case is important, but being able to run my business is even more important. And that's one of the biggest drivers behind automation. If you've been following our story for some time, you will have seen this concept before. Those of you that are new to it, take a moment out to kind of digest the slide. But what we're really saying here is to create the opportunities, to capitalize on the opportunities that I was just describing, we have to move from systems of record to systems of reality. What do I mean by that? Well, we're all pretty familiar with systems of record. These are enterprise resource planning or ERP systems, or think about a warehouse management system or a transportation management system, or CRM from a customer relationship management perspective, or even a electronic medical record system in healthcare as an example. These are all systems of record, and they're extremely important. They're going to remain important, but they largely tell us what should be happening. What is the plan? Where should my resources be? Where do I think my inventory is at? But in a world where we have to deliver in an on-demand way, in a world where an order is placed and 30 minutes later, it's delivered. And that's becoming a reality in many urban centers. Systems of record aren't sufficient themselves. We also need systems of reality. These are systems that can literally see in real time, where are people, where are capital assets, where is the inventory? Not where should it be or where is it supposed to be, but where it actually is. And using that information in real time, combined with that edge AI and analytics and the economic benefits that are starting to be realized through the efficiencies I mentioned on the previous slide, to orchestrate actions at the edge, enable those frontline workers to be the best they can be, but also enable the efficiencies from a labor perspective that our customers require in order to deliver on the expectations that consumers have. So this has never been more relevant. It's about innovation at the edge. It's about driving real-time views. And it's about using all of that data to make those digital decisions that make workers' lives better. And we're investing here pretty massively, I would say. You can scan this slide, but one thing I just wanted to highlight from the get-go is if you were to rewind 2 years, almost all of the information that you see along the bottom 3 rows would be blank. Pretty much, maybe there'd be 1 or 2 areas populated, but the rest would be blank, which really shows the level of investment that Zebra has had organically through venture investments and startups, as well as through the acquisition space, where we've completed about 8 acquisitions over the last 36 months. And as I mentioned earlier, a few just over the last couple of months. And the reason we've been doing that is because systems of reality, which is where we need to go, are going to be enabled by 4 key technologies. They're laid out here across the top of the slide. And let me break it down for you into kind of 2 categories, if you will. The left-hand side of the slide, those first 2 categories of location tracking and computer vision, are really about visibility. They're about where is it, what is it, and how is it. Think about identification, location, and condition. And that's where we've been investing in location and tracking, and even more recently, computer vision and machine vision to provide that visibility. But as many of you know, visibility isn't good enough because you write the applications that turn that visibility into value. So you understand that better than most. And so we've also had to invest in the areas on the right-hand side, which is, what do you do with all that visibility? Well, you drive that digital decisioning I was mentioning earlier that helps take this massive amount of data and turn it from frankly, what really is just a bigger problem. More data doesn't create a solution, it creates a bigger challenge. But use that data to convert it into decisions that can be mobilized to individuals to get work done. Create those optimal decisions and drive that using machine learning and AI in this category of digital decision. The second is robotics, where maybe the output of that digital decision doesn't go to a human all the time. Maybe it doesn't always go to a worker. Maybe it goes to a robot. And maybe said another way, when the worker is a robot, we want to be able to direct and orchestrate that robot as well. And I'll talk a little bit about it later, but we don't see this big cliff over to automation. I think a lot of the media and the headlines out there would lead you to believe that lights out, dark warehouses, and the robots take over is going to be the way things go. But listen, we're much more plugged into the front line, as you know, working with our customers, and we see a bit of a different path there. We see a path where humans and robots collaborate together in what's called a cobot-based deployment mechanism, and each do what they do best. The robots being able to navigate and transport around an environment, and the humans being able to do the more skilled work of articulating and picking and packing and shipping. So we think that's got a really long tail to it, and that's the reason why we've been investing in Plus One Robotics, Locus Robotics, and then our really exciting acquisition of Fetch Robotics is really focused on delivering that human-robot collaboration. All right, well, let's now translate that into what does it mean to the market? These drivers, when you look at those transformations I was mentioning earlier, these drivers are what's occurring as a result of those transformations. And as you can see here, we're talking a lot about being able to automate workflows, same day, next day shipping. So in order to deliver in an on-demand economy, that's going from days to within a day a shipment. And now there's about 6 startups that we've been tracking that are delivering anywhere from 15 minutes to 2 hours groceries inside of urban environments. So it's just a fantastic acceleration of what on-demand really means. And then that's led to end-to-end supply chain visibility. More and more of our customers are saying, if I'm going to react, and not even really react, but predict and be proactive about deploying my assets, I need that supply chain visibility. And then, of course, from a retail perspective, multi-channel retailing is something that many of us have been talking about for, the probably about a decade and a half, right? But when you look at the acceleration as a result of COVID, when you look at the changes in behaviors, this has now become a much, much important part of the way retailers are investing. Probably about 1/3 now of tier 1 retailers' labor is being spent picking inside of a store environment for either curbside pickup or shipped from store to somebody's home. And so we've translated these into vertical investment themes that we're investing in at Zebra. And what I want to do is touch on these themes here really at a high level, but then use this as a table of contents, if you will, to click down on each one of these verticals and show you the dynamics of that vertical, how we're investing in those dynamics, and then how we're looking to take that on a go-forward basis from a solutions perspective. So that's going to be the journey we go on here. And as you take a look at those investment themes, let me highlight a few. In manufacturing and warehouse, you see a lot of overlap down there, right? Autonomous mobile robots, visibility, areas like workforce productivity. Those are all areas that are, I would say, very common themes from a manufacturing and a warehouse perspective. On the transportation logistics side, we get more into this, not just supply chain visibility, but how do I use that visibility to create optimized routes and overall operational optimization and execution. That could be within the four walls of a facility, but it's also at the network level. It's also at, as I'm optimizing across facilities, how do I use the data from each one in order to better optimize across all those various points on the supply chain. And I'll click down on that a little bit more in a bit. And then in retail, as you heard from Suresh, probably the most transformative, given the dynamics there in terms of the way retail is being fulfilled. Lots of focus on inventory management, again, at the store level, but also across the network, distribution centers, warehouses, and stores. And then order fulfillment, whether that's order fulfillment from a store or within a given distribution center, lots of changes there. We're seeing things like robots and different types of robotic systems being deployed as fulfillment centers on the back of stores, dedicated micro fulfillment centers that are out there. And then that also taking a lot of our warehouse technology, as many of you may have seen, into the front of the store, which a couple of years ago, I don't think any of us, would have expected. But as the front of the store turns into a bit of a warehouse, if you will, to do picking for curbside pickup and ship from store, we're seeing those investments be made as well. So let's click on in to retail. And the most profound thing that's happening in retail, as you see in the title of the slide, is that it might be 2021, but if you didn't know better, you would think it was 2028, because our customers and the retail industry in general is investing in e-commerce adoption in a way that has really fast forwarded their strategies 5, 6, and 7 years. And that's pretty much where the analysts are saying things are at, that we're seeing about a 5 to 7 year acceleration in e-commerce adoption technologies. And the reason for this really drives or comes down to the two areas you see on the left-hand and right-hand side of the slide. The one around the left-hand side is around complexity. The number of routes to the end consumer is literally now thousands of routes to the end consumer. When you look at the number of permutations by which you can order, pick and pack, deliver, and receive, you're literally at over 3,000 routes to the end customer. And why does that matter? Well, it matters because it's a massive amount of complexity, and to provide those deliveries in ways that are going to meet the SLAs that those retailers have to their customers, it just fundamentally requires automation. There's too many permutations to do all of that manually. And the second is around profitability or cost. As we see more and more of the labor being borne by the retailer as opposed to by the shopper, which is kind of intuitive, right? When you and I go into a store and shop, we're actually performing the labor of picking those items off the shelf, putting it in our baskets, and frankly, even checking ourselves out. But when you ship to a model of curbside pickup or ship to your home, now the retailer is doing that labor of picking, packing, and bearing the shipping costs. And as a result, as you can see here, that's a very unprofitable equation for retailers, particularly in the grocery space. Look at grocery picks from the store for either curbside or ship from home. You're in the double-digit negative profitability margin profile there. And so technology, orchestrating actions, being able to use automation is going to be really important to shift this over to a profitable model for those grocers and for retailers in general. And you might say, well, why are retailers doing this if it's not profitable? Well, think about those behavioral shifts I mentioned earlier. They just don't have a choice. Consumers are demanding that their experiences be filled this way, and therefore these have become business imperatives for customers. which is a great opportunity for us to help improve the world, to help improve the quality of life for those frontline workers, and to help these retailers be able to drive towards profitability. And so the way we're doing that at Zebra is through these three key pillars within retail. Number one, build a smarter operation, enable associates to operate efficiently in the store. Number two, optimize your inventory and fulfillment, have that inventory visibility from delivery at the dock door to arrival on the shelf. And number three, elevate the customer experience by removing the friction from the process. How can we help customers shop more easily with things like personal shopper? How can we enable them to check out anywhere by bringing mobile point of sale into the hands of store associates so that they can check out customers wherever they may be within the store environment? So these are the three key investment pillars by Zebra. And then when you think about how does that translate into the actual offerings we have that you can, as developers, create application and API integration on top of, but our customers can use to help solve these problems, it breaks down much the way you see here. Obviously, continued investment on our mobility platforms and our core portfolio, lots of investment on these visibility platforms, from RFID, that's getting a lot more traction now, to venture investments we've made in shelf edge camera companies, being able to use RFID technology combined with vision technology to triangulate on what's happening in a given environment, or even robots in the case of SmartSight that can navigate a store autonomously to be able to detect out of stocks and then mobilize that information via an API directly to Reflexis, as you see on the right, task management, or maybe as an API into one of the applications that you've developed that can help unlock the workflow and the value on the store floor by the store staff. So lots of investments by Zebra across these core mobile and computing platforms, visibility platforms, transforming from just being handheld to being infrastructure and intelligent environment-based visibility platforms, and then being able to orchestrate those workflows through our investments, many of which are being done through the acquisitions we've made over the last couple of years in places like Reflexis and Zebra Prescriptive Analytics. So lots of opportunity here for our developers, and look forward to engaging with all of you on those. Now let's shift gears over to the warehouse. Equally exciting area, one that you as developers have brought a lot of value to over the years, one that from a Zebra perspective is probably one of the most profitable places for Zebra, given the ruggedization and the mission criticality of the warehouse when picking and packing and looking to fulfill orders. But we're also seeing a lot of dynamics here, not the least of which is the movement towards item level fulfillment. We're really seeing that increase. This was a trend that was underway before COVID, but again, has gotten massively accelerated. So it's not just about bulk picking anymore. It's really about eaches. And a number of customers I've met with have used this terminology before, where they've said, hey, picking in our warehouses is kind of really shift from cases to eaches. And that might sound pretty simple. Well, okay, I'm going to pick an individual item versus a case. But if you think about how that impacts the workflow, it changes the types of tools that those workers have, the way they pick, the way they can collaborate with automation, as you see on the right-hand side of this chart, with something like a fetch robot. It also changes how they need to modernize their warehouse execution and warehouse management systems, many of which were designed decades ago and were focused on case level picking. So as many of you may know, there's a lot of WMS installments out there that just simply don't have the intelligence to drive each level picking. And that's an opportunity for all of us to capitalize on that disruption, that change, bring our own solutions to bear that integrate with those WMS and WES systems so that we can take those legacy deployments and bridge them into a modern world where this each-based picking is occurring inside these environments, bring automation, bring orchestration, bring heads-up display and directed action workflow to those environments that are areas we've spoken about for quite some time, but now I think they've really ripened, and we're seeing, I guess as I would call it, a pull by our customers as opposed to a push of that vision by us. And then a few of the other stats you see along the those blue boxes, the rectangles there, obviously higher turnover in the warehouse, 30% annually, lots of labor intensive challenges, which is driving the uptake in automation. And then the compound effects of turnover with the amount of time it takes to train an employee. So by bringing modern applications, by taking cues from applications that are used in the social networking space. Nobody gets trained on how to use an Instagram, right? type application. It's just something that's intuitive and is easy to use from day one. So as you may have heard from Suresh, we're making a lot of investments in our user experience, user interface, and APIs so that we can enable those intuitive experiences. And what we really want to get to is zero training. Pick up the device, pick up the app, and just go to work. That's what we want to get to in these type of warehouse environments. And that'll help us address these challenges that are fueling the transformation I mentioned earlier. So how are we investing in the warehouse space? 3 key pillars again. Workflow execution, kind of the analog of what I described in retail, but in warehouse. And I mentioned some of the ways we're doing that. The visible warehouse is a big one. We're seeing a lot of uptake in our location solutions in visible warehouse, as well as in manufacturing, which I'll cover shortly. And then intelligent automation is all about this material movement, conveyance, but in the non-traditional sense, using autonomous robots and collaboration of those robots with humans to do that. And so this kind of gives you an idea of what that landscape is starting to look like and how we're filling it out within Zebra. So a couple of examples I want to start with is when we last met regionally for App Forum, before we had the Global DevCon, the bookends of this story on this slide probably look really familiar. Zebra DNA on one side and Zebra Data Services on the other side. So being able to bring intelligence into our devices that you can access to deliver more powerful applications being one. And then Zebra Data Services on the right, which was our promise to you to connect more and more of our portfolio and then create an API web-based gateway that you can interact with in order to deliver value into your applications. So we've continued to build those out, but now we've pushed into the middle with things like Fulfillment Edge and the launch of that with heads-up display. Being able to integrate that with real-time visibility. So it's not just enough to be able to give somebody the right form factor and the right user interface to deliver on what we're talking about here. We also have to bring context from the rest of the environment. Where are the goods I need to interact with? Where are the people I need to interact with? Where are the capital assets I need to interact with? And bring all of that contextual information through computer vision and RFID into the intelligence of the workflow. And then coordinate that, as you see in the fourth box to the right, coordinate that with the autonomous mobile robot through the Fetch investment, so we can kind of have this very harmonious dance between the human worker inside these environments and the robot. They can each deliver what they do best to deliver the outcomes that are required in that given environment. So lots of investment towards the middle of this chart and lots of familiarity. Hopefully you recognize from what we spoke about a couple of years ago at the app forums on the outer bookends of this chart as well. Okay, click down into manufacturing. Let's take a look there. Lots going on in manufacturing, and manufacturing has probably been one of those verticals that have been the later to adopt vertical. And what we're seeing here is that the idea of the on-demand economy, is rippling down to the manufacturing environment. So it kind of started up into supply chain, transportation, logistics, and retail, but now it's rippled all the way down to on-demand production. And thinking about how these manufacturing environments become much more flexible and dynamic to be able to accommodate an on-demand world. And so, as you see on this chart, the 6 satellite circles around the center manufacturing core or hub of what we're showing on the diagram on the left. I don't want to talk about all of those. What I want to talk about is which of those satellite circles can you and we and together can we affect and change to help our customers get things done? And the others, frankly, are probably a little bit more, less influenceable, I would say. So the top 2, the shortage of skilled workers and the sourcing of materials, and then the one at about the 7 o'clock position where it says dynamic production. Those three are ones that we really have the opportunity to leverage the technology, the portfolio, the capabilities, the APIs, and your applications to improve in these manufacturing environments. The shortage of skilled workers can be overcome through automation and better orchestration and directed workflows for the workers that are there in these environments. The sourcing of materials can become more predictive and proactive as opposed to reactive by providing that supply chain visibility. And then dynamic production can be better enabled because if we've got the ability to flex on human resources, capital resources, and the raw materials and inventory, then we can drive true dynamic production in a much more real-time way. So I think you're picking up on the formula here at this point. We've really focused over the last 18 months on saying, well, what areas do we want to invest in very deliberately in order to realize that value? And within manufacturing, we focused on three key areas. The first is around quality assurance. And the biggest indicator of our bet in this space has been the release of our machine vision offerings earlier this year. These are fixed industrial scanning and machine vision-based smart cameras that can be deployed into manufacturing and logistics environments for ensuring that subassemblies are built the right way, that the right number of product is in or in a box before it's shipped, that any anomalies or defects in production can be autonomously detected and then flagged for exception without ever requiring a human to look at that particular asset. And then the asset and facility management has really been building on our location solutions portfolio. And here we have seen quite a bit of uptake in interest around location solutions in these environments. And I would say in the last couple of quarters, a nice healthy mix profile and bookings by our partners, primarily by our partners, but also by end customers in this asset and facility management through location visibility inside these manufacturing environments. And the last one being traceability, really focused on the roots of where we've all come from, right? Which is around track and trace, being able to use barcode identification technology to make sure we're tracking those assets and goods all along the way. The one thing I will say that's become even more to the forefront on traceability, though, is bringing the condition aspect, not just the location, the identification, but also the condition. What kind of environmental condition, what kind of maybe shock, I think vibration and impact that a particular item is experienced through the supply chain, and being able to data log that as it moves through the supply chain and then transmit it back to the cloud. So that's some of what we're doing around environmental condition tracking with Temptime, right, in our Temptime portfolio. But stay tuned for more investments and announcements from us next year around digital logging in a cloud-based way of product that's moving through the supply chain. So we can bring that real context and the how is it to the what and the where. So lots more to come around traceability from Zebra as we invest in that pillar. And many of these I covered as I was going through the last couple of slides, but I do want to just mention a couple around these 6 areas that are manifesting themselves out as solutions. Obviously, many of you are very familiar with Visibility IQ. And again, we've made APIs available there for you to be able to integrate to have better device and operational intelligence. With Savannah, our cloud-based platform, where we continue to connect more and more of our Link OS, our Android mobile computers. And as we look at these data sensors that are going to be able to log data as it moves through the supply chain, you're going to see a whole other suite of IoT sensing capability that we're going to be able to light up as data that goes into that Savannah cloud that you can integrate to via APIs. And the last one I want to mention, because I think it's an opportunity right here and now, it's not a futures thing, is what's really happening with RFID. RFID has been around a long time, but I think the economics of the readers, the deployment of those readers in a cloud-native way, and then the need, because of a lot of the trends we spoke about, to have real-time supply chain visibility, the RFID proposition is resonating like never before. We've been seeing double-digit growth, well into the double digits in RFID over the last couple of years. There's no sign of that slowing down. And I think given our investments, our continued investments in cloud enablement and RFID, working with partners to be able to deploy those solutions, we're going to see a very solid increase in that RFID adoption. So if that's not a place you're looking at for application and dev innovation, maybe have a little bit of a session with your team and see what may make sense for you there in terms of your strategy. Okay, let's take it home on transportation and logistics. Probably second to retail, maybe not even tied with retail, could be. Transportation and logistics has been the one vertical that's been the most disrupted and had to embrace the most change over the last 18 months. And why is that? Just scan the left-hand side of this chart and just think about your own interactions in terms of the way you order goods and your anticipation of how they get delivered. I want to pick off just a couple of stats on this slide, and they're really around what's in the two middle boxes on the green rectangles on the right-hand side. In 2020, more than 100 billion packages have kind of moved through the supply chain. And why is that noteworthy? Well, it's a really big number, but it's also on a trajectory such that by 2025, parcels will be at equal volume to mail. Now, why does that matter? And what does that really mean? Let me start with the second part first. What it really means is mail volume is going down, probably not surprising, as many of us transition to digital ways of interacting instead of traditional mail. Parcel volume is going up, and what we're really saying is by 2025, those are going to cross over. Now, the first part, why does that matter? Well, the profitability associated with delivering a parcel is a much tighter equation than a profitability associated with delivering mail. And so we're going to see a big transformation here in terms of what do public carriers do from a last mile perspective? How do they rely on the postal system? How does the postal system transform as more and more of its volume goes through parcel, which has got a lower profitability than mail, and engage with those carriers and providers? So I think we're going to see over the next couple of years as we get into 2025, a lot more public, private, government, public company partnerships between postal, parcel. And what is that going to mean? It's going to be data integration. It's going to be data exchange. It's going to be API connectivity. And I think that's a great opportunity for developers. So maybe think about that one a little bit as you consider your strategies. And the second one I wanted to point out, which I don't have the answer for, but let's look at what the problem is that 61% of T&L organizations say last mile delivery is the most inefficient part of the process, which means really the last mile is constituting over 1/3 of the total cost of a shipment. So think about that for a second. You're shipping a product from one side of the country to the other. The last few miles take up nearly 1/3 of the overall cost of that shipment. So what's going to play out here? What I can tell you is something we're already seeing, which is the gig economy is going to play out here. The idea that Uber delivers instead of Uber drives, and the companies like Instacart, who have hired 300,000 workers over the last year to be able to deliver groceries from a retail store to somebody's home, this thing's going to get gigged out, right? But if it's going to get gigged out, how are we going to connect the dots? How are we going to enable a gig worker that gets up on a Saturday afternoon and decides they're going to deliver packages to be able to interface with all of the enterprise data that we're collecting from devices, vehicles, and all that supply chain visibility I mentioned earlier? Well, I can tell you how that's going to get connected. It's going to get connected by our developer community using our APIs and using the public-facing APIs of those gig platforms to be able to bring the value of those two streams together. I think a lot of opportunity there, unprecedented, and every developer I know is super excited about how they can connect the gig economy with the legacy enterprise type data. So some really cool stuff. So the strategic investments we're looking at here are around asset inventory and visibility. Sounds very familiar. These third-party logistics workflow and task automation. And maybe third-party logistics isn't just the traditional 3PL, but it's the gig worker, as I was just mentioning earlier. And then network optimization. What do I mean by network optimization? Well, if you think about Zebra and you think about Zebra and our developer community together, we've been really focused over the last couple of decades on optimizing within a node. What do I mean by a node? I mean the four walls of a facility, a warehouse, a distribution center, a store. That's what I mean by a node. Even a vehicle maybe is a node, right? It's a confined space in which we're bringing our value. But where are things going? Where things are going is that we're giving each one of those nodes, the vehicle, the warehouse, the distribution center, and the store, a digital voice. And as that digital voice becomes louder, we have the opportunity to just not optimize each one of those nodes, but to optimize the network end to end, to be able to connect all these dots end to end and optimize the network. And if we're going to deliver on the experiences I was describing earlier, that's where the money's at. You can't just optimize a node anymore. It's important, it's an imperative, but it's not sufficient. We have to optimize across nodes so that an order that's being picked in a warehouse that's 800 miles away from where a store is going to pick it off the shelf to ship it to my home is being predictively picked in that warehouse 800 miles away, so it arrives at that store just in time for when my order needs to be filled. That's the way we've got to combine this data, mesh it together, and create the predictive capabilities that the on-demand economy requires. So in closing, I want to first thank everybody again for joining our Global DevCon. Hopefully you're as excited as I am, and you can see my excitement. And I want to leave you with a couple of simple messages. Know that Zebra is thinking API first. We're thinking platforms, security, and support, so you can focus on applications and not worry about those things. Second, we're investing in those APIs and making them common so that you can build on top of those investments and deliver your value faster. Really, it's about us delivering our collective value faster. And finally, our customers' challenges require your innovation more than ever. We need you to innovate, to create, to build, to deliver, to help our customers realize the expectations their customers have placed on them. And the only way we do that is if we win together. We're here to help. Please reach out. We're looking forward to your feedback. You've got the developer@zebra.com way of dropping that in. Please do drop me a note. I'm going to be taking a look at them, or reach out anytime. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of DevCon 2021.